Guys, that's not how fantasy football works. Time out, my Balrog wants some Gatorade. This one was especially fun to draw. We'll see why. But got Wolverine. Magneto should be around here somewhere. Jason said, "Whoa, it's Wolverine!" Voice, "Luke, wake up!" Poof. Huh? I need you to come with me to Alderaan. Whoa, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Voice says, "Master, wake up!" Poof. Huh? Whoa, it's Gollum. Voice says, "Jason, wake up!" Poof. Now we've got actual Jason. Huh? His mom saying, "You know, it was a lot easier to get you out of bed." 10 more minutes, please. Dream level 6 was going to have zombies. Oh, before I show you the next one, the next slide, this comic does not run for another month. So, if you know any newspaper editors, don't tell them. I might get in trouble. This runs in late April, or late August. Go sit with the cool kids, Eileen. This is the cool kids. It's a Fallout thing. My friend Eileen says, it's going to be a long school year, isn't it? And, the question is, is there a favorite theme I have when I'm writing and drawing the strip? And I do think the comics where I channel the nerdy stuff through Jason, especially with the strips I've shown you here, you know, they speak to sort of my inner Jason, and they tend to be more outlandish. It's more fun to draw Jason dressed up as Incredible Hulk or something than it is to just draw two characters in the kitchen talking about school. I do like the academic angle in my strip. You don't see a lot of that in comics. It gets harder and harder as I get older to remember science and so forth, but I like that there's a little microscopic element of that in there. Way in the back, yeah.
So I know things are different now, but back in the early days of webcomics, it seems like when there was a lot of bad blood between newspaper comics and webcomics, you were one of the first newspaper comics to really embrace webcomics and their creators. I was just wondering, like, how did you discover that, or how did you get involved with the Penny Arcade folks, things like that?
Yeah. So the question is how did I get involved with cartoonists and so forth, especially back in the late '90s when there was a little bit of friction. I met the Penny Arcade guys. They were probably the first cartoonists I met. I met them, I think it was at the first BlizzCon. I went, just as an attendee, and they had a little table and they were selling some stuff, and I told them I'm a huge fan, because drawing Foxtrot, I have to be online and just keep track of what kids are doing. And we kept in touch, and then they invited me to join their World of Warcraft guild. So that was fun. And so through them, I met a few other web cartoonists, and now I go to they have a series of gaming conventions every year called PAX, and they let me come and have a table there, and sometimes I give a talk, sometimes I don't. And I've gotten to meet Randall Monroe, ex-KCD cartoonist, and Scott Kurtz and some others. Yeah, I think in the early days, a lot of print cartoonists were understandably concerned that there was a new breed of cartoonists whose business model was give the content away for free, because they were worried the publications who pay their bills would suddenly go, why are we paying for this? People can read it online. But I think Fenson's involved in it. Sure, right there.
So I know you said a lot during this talk that you double-check to make sure that you don't make any mistakes in your comics. What's the worst mistake you did make that caused you to start doing that?
The most embarrassing one was early on in Foxtrot. I went back to, I think it would have been my college reunion. And I've just been syndicated. I'm feeling really important and cool in front of all my college buddies. And one of my old calculus professors comes up. My first or second book. And I'm like, oh, Professor Starr wants me to sign a book for him or something. And he comes up and talks to me. He's got a Post-it note in there, and he opens it up and shows it to me. And he's like, you got the law of signs wrong. So, and that seared itself into my head. Every now and then do make a mistake, and my excuse is I was a B student in college. So I'm bound to screw up, 15 or 20% of the time. Yeah. Desperation. I don't know. I just always have enjoyed problem solving and math, and I always like word problems more than just standard algebra, because it was sort of a puzzle element to it. And I've always liked drawing cartoons. And maybe there's something in the way you write a comic that you need to get from A to D with a punchline at the end. It's almost like a word problem or something. It's like, what's the path that gets me from here to there, where people get surprised at the end and it all makes logical sense. But I don't know. I like to joke that maybe whatever screw is loose in my brain that made me want to study physics also made me crazy enough to think I could make a living drawing silly pictures. So, yeah. Because I have lots of friends who do, and it's and I sell little 20-sided dice on my web store. It's been so long, I would have to absolutely start from zero and read all the rule books. And I do have friends who play. It's kind of crazy how a lot of the things from my childhood. There was no geek culture back in the 70s when I was in high school, and so playing Dungeons and Dragons and being president of the math club were not things to brag about. And it's sort of fun to see that the culture has just sort of shifted to embrace a lot of nerdy things that I love. But you would know. Yeah.
So, I know a lot of us are disappointed when you went with weekly or daily, but for you personally, what was the biggest benefit of doing that? You avoided burnout or the process?
Yeah, so in 2007, I guess, I had a 20-year contract. Back in the day, that was the standard rookie contract, 20-year commitment. And somewhere around year 10, I realized, holy cow, this is killing me. And somehow got to the end of the contract, and when we were renegotiating, I said, I can't keep going. I have no free time. I'm in my 40s, and I'm literally pulling an all-nighter at least once a week. And so for me, the switch to once a week, instead of 7 days a week, was one of, if I didn't do that, I don't think I could get to the industry. I was just psychologically burned out. And so now doing this script once a week, I've been doing it for, 17 years. I work 2.5 days a week on the comic, and I have time to just putter around and decompress. My income took a huge hit. There are more important things sometimes.
I was asking you to ask something similar to that. Like, do you ever find, I miss like the 6-day story that you build on.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself missing that? And also, some of the recurring characters have disappeared. Like, is Denise, is she ever going to come back?
Yeah, so
why do they leave?
So switching from, so when I did the dailies every day, very frequently the Monday through Saturday comics would have a little mini story arc. And those were frequently fun to write, and a lot of times they were easier to write because I could just come up with one idea, like, Jason wants to program an AI or something, and I could get 6 comics out of that, whereas with the Sundays it has to be a one-time joke. So I do miss being able to flesh out an idea and have multiple takes on one subject. But I can't do that with the Sundays, obviously, because week to week to week is too big a gap. Somewhat, and he's also about Denise and other side characters who may have sort of faded away. So Peter, in the early years of the strip, had a blind girlfriend named Denise, and she was a very popular character, and I like her character. But I found myself just including her less and less and less, and there are probably multiple reasons. And then once Calvin and Hobbes retired, I kind of doubled my client list overnight, and I was terrified that I'm going to lose clients because when you have a new kid on the newspaper funny pages, you're the first one they're going to cancel when readers complain. And so I just kind of, not consciously, but I was determined to just be funny like every day for a while, just so newspapers wouldn't have an excuse to get rid of me. And so a lot of this more sensitive storylines took a back seat. And I think once enough time had passed, I was like, well, do I really want to go back to high school melodramas? Because at that point now you had Luann and Zitz doing perfectly good teen romance storylines. But I was the only one doing a lot of these sort of sciencey, nerdy comics, and so I just decided to lean into that. In my mind, Denise and other characters are still there. So I have not done strips with Peter, David, anybody. I just have moved away from that. Maybe someday I'll do a long-form comic. No promises. Way back. Yeah. I don't multitask well, I've come to realize that for a while I tried to write a children's book separate from Foxtrot, and by the time I kind of got in the zone and was working on that, it'd be my comic strip deadline, and I had to switch back to Foxtrot, and my brain was in the wrong place. And so for now at least, I'm sort of just doing the Foxtrot comics. I don't know how much longer newspapers realistically are going to be buying comics. The future of newspapers is very questionable. So that may force the issue at some point that I need to do something else. But I'm also not feeling like there are cartoons that I'm burning to draw. Like this does satisfy my itch to cartoon.
When you first started out, did the characters look a lot like this in your mind? You were designing them, or did you go through several iterations?
I went through several iterations, and I thought about bringing some samples, and then I just decided no. But yeah, the early Foxtrots looked very similar, but slightly different. Like I didn't have. Like now I've got the nose off on the side of the head. It's like a weird Picasso thing. The early ones did not have that, and in fact, when I was getting rejection letters, one of the syndicates that I won't name said, well, we really like this strip. Could you make it look more like Bloom County? Tried to draw Foxtrot to look more like Bloom County, and they said, well, we still really like this strip. Could you make it look more like Garfield? So I drew a submission to look more like Garfield. And then a different syndicate, Universal Press Syndicate, suddenly got interested and said, well, could you do like one more month of submissions and we'll make a decision? And I said, well, which art style do you like? Which do you prefer? And they said, well, we like the one you started with. So the way I'm drawing now is largely how I started. It's just a little more polished because I know what I'm doing a little more. In the early versions, Paige was not Paige. She had black hair. I was named Tracy, and she used to wear sort of 80s Madonna clothes. Moved her in a different direction. That just be better conflict with the brothers to have her personality be what it is now. Gosh.
First of all, thank you. It's tremendously generous to put that much time into something to benefit other people. Thank you for that. But along with that, where you've been doing it for so long and they don't age, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse to make characters that are beloved, right? Because then people want them to be the thing that they love. Have you found that it's been a challenge to have them expand as your
a challenge. Using the same characters for 36 years, and they're all the same age, and so every Christmas, it's like, how do I get a new take on Christmas or Halloween or anything like that? One of the things I hope I've done fairly successfully is I've kept their personalities largely intact, but I've just rotated through sort of the trappings of the era. So, you know, early Jason might be obsessed with the X-Files or Star Trek Next Generation, and then he moved on to Deep Space Nine, and then, you know, and now he's past Jurassic Park, and so he's still the same Jason, it's just the storylines have different polish to them, or different colors and so forth. But, you know, I didn't have kids, I wasn't married when I started the comic strip, and then I got married, and I had children, and so my kids started influencing my writing more than, initially I was just relying on my own memories of childhood, and then I had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, to, you know, look at, see what they're doing, and get in trouble. All right, I just... First computer, and will Stefan passes I ever have a wordplay about it. I like to tell him that pun jokes are like too easy. Wait, what was the first question? First computer. So when I was in high school, my parents had one of those Apple II Pluses. And my memories are like you couldn't have upper or lowercase characters, everything was uppercase. And then went off to college where they had, you know, a fax mini computer system with terminals. And then after college, I bought one of the first Macs. And, sort of, I've been a Mac guy sort of all my life, or an Apple guy. You know, I got a laptop.
So, when are we going to get a graphic novel?
As I said, when newspapers suddenly say we don't need Foxtrot anymore, I might be scrambling for what comes next. Doing graphic novels is a scary idea because you put tons and tons and tons and tons of hours into something and you don't necessarily know if it works. Whereas I could do, in the same amount of time, probably 60 comic strips, and just a few of them will be good.
Like, oh, this pop culture reference will work for the family, or this one is a funny pop culture reference but won't work for Foxtrot?
It's kind of like any of the jokes is, you know, I might think of a joke, but how do I get it to feel like a natural marriage with the characters? And that's just part of the writing process. Okay, yeah, Jason wouldn't do that, or Jason wouldn't say that. And part of the challenge too is like there are things in the pop culture that I'm not particularly knowledgeable about. So like anime jokes, I'm not an anime guy, and I would hate to just try to do something because it's trendy and then get it wrong. Rather just sort of stick to things I'm pretty confident stick to. Yeah.
Yeah. So given how turbulent the newspaper industry is, what's happening in the industry? Because it's not just Foxtrot, there are a bunch of other newspaper comic strips out there. And what are creators pivoting towards?
I can't speak to other cartoonists, so I don't know. Like I am still miraculously doing pretty well from newspapers. Comic content is pretty affordable for a newspaper versus paying a writer to fill those same pages. The challenge now is to have these big newspaper groups, and in the past, every individual newspaper would decide what comics to run, and now these big chains want it to be a unified comics page for all 20 of their papers. And so if you are lucky enough to be one of the chosen ones for this big newspaper group, yay, lots of eyeballs and income, but just as easily you could be left out. It's like, yikes, I just lost 10% of my income or something. So that's the current thing I worry about. It's like, I feel like any day now. McClatchy or somebody could say we don't like Foxtrot. But I am sure that anecdotally, I know a lot of cartoonists have written some children's books, sort of the Wimpy Kid style, and all. Back cap.
Yeah, my uncle was a classmate of yours at Amherst. And you mentioned earlier about the professor with the sticky note. I'm just curious, have there been any other Amherst influences over your time?
One question. What is the town's name where the family lives? There is no official location for the family. I think once, like if you go online and dig really deep, there's some speculation that they live in somewhere called Hillsdale, I think. And I think that's because way back in an early strip, I had like something saying something about Hillsdale Mall. But that was a reference to a mall in San Mateo, California, near where I grew up, and I just sort of threw that in there. When I was a kid, I lived outside of Boston when I was Jason's age, and then I lived near San Francisco when I was Paige and Peter's age. Now I live in Kansas City, so there's sort of a mix of all those locations in my head while I'm writing the script. So when they're at the beach, I'm probably thinking they're in Cape Cod. When they're, in the snow, they're in Kansas City, that sort of thing. All right, so thank you guys very much. Signing wherever the autograph area is nearby here, and I don't charge money or anything like that. So if you have something for me to sign, I'll sign it. I also brought some little marketing prints I can sign it. Thank you.
Like cartoons, movies, books, music, I demand you subscribe to this channel. Subscribe, be prepared. Subscribe or be prepared for doom. Do not resist. Do not resist. Subscribe. Subscribe. Subscribe.